Last year, the cannabis market grossed $12 billion in revenue. I'm watching the culture and language shift around it. How did cannabis move from side streets to Wall Street?
Marijuana is the most dangerous drug in the United States.
If you want to keep your freedom, you have to stay free of drugs. 3 strikes and you are out.
When did something oh so dangerous become allegedly so safe? Cannabis is undergoing a deep rebrand. But it is doing what cannabis has always done, bringing people together. It's the intersection where soccer moms and urbanites link up. I remember just yesterday when we were fishbowling in cars. Now today we're watching them pop open these weed bars. Med to Rec has opened up a cannabis frontier like no other. I want to examine the social impact, the culture, and those that are pushing transformation forward. Welcome to the world of loud.
Are you looking for something specific?
I heard you guys have great flowers.
We do. Welcome to the Woo. I can show you what we have. Limoncello crossed with jet fuel, gelato, and biscotti.
Wait, what's jet fuel? What's jet fuel and biscotti?
It's limoncello crossed with...
This is watermelon. Growing up, I always had cannabis. It was in my household. It was in my neighborhood. I got started in the legal cannabis industry about 10 years ago. My background was in finance, and I was actually working not too far from here in downtown Boston. Big corporate job, sitting behind a desk. I started to work with a lot of medical institutions, and the word cannabis kept popping up. Large investment dollars start pouring into this industry. People from the legacy industry, they were being locked out. So we actually started working on the recreational legalization campaign in 2016.
Marijuana. It's stimulating, mind expanding, and as much a part of growing up as smoking corn silk behind the back fence.
This morning, it is legal to smoke marijuana in the state.
Massachusetts voters passed marijuana legalization.
I think parents should ask themselves which bag of candy here is marijuana and which one isn't.
This is the wild, wild west. We're looking at people who can grow it in their homes. That will bring incentive for people to come into Massachusetts and start a black market business.
The Yes on 4 does not bring cannabis to the Commonwealth. It's already here. We've already accepted that it's here. This is a plan to eventually eliminate the black market.
I've always viewed the competition as the legacy market because that's where I know people are coming from and that's where I know the market is gonna go, right? Majority of the folks that are in the legacy market, like I was for years, are gonna transition to the legit market eventually. So I always viewed that as my competition, not necessarily other dispensaries. You need to at least pay attention to what's going on with like the science piece, the Delta 8 and what's going on there. But at the same time, you also have to pay attention to what's going on in the illicit market because it's something as simple as bags, right? The Malar bags, right? Over the last 5 years has really blown up with the designs, with the gelato, all those things that didn't come from the corporate world. That came from the illicit market. That came from the streets. That came from. So you get impressed from all these different sides where you kind of got to take a piece and understand what's going on. That's probably one of the most unique aspects is all these different worlds are kind of combining into one. And there's few players, a few people that really touch upon all those things.
When we originally created New Dia, the concept was New Day and Diversity in Action. Our goal was always to be able to tap into that culture that reflected us. A few months in, I had a friend who introduced me to cookies, and they were looking to break into the East Coast. When you think of cannabis branding, cookies replicated a lot of what we wanted to do already, but obviously at like a massive scale. So we decided to dive in, and it became the first cookies on the East Coast. And it was massive from day one. I mean, we had lines around the block.
Touchdown, woo, you know the vibes. We here with it.
People from the community just had a huge sense of pride being the first one on the East Coast.
East Coast, Massachusetts. Came straight from work at 7 o'clock this morning.
I feel a lot of the customers that come through this door, not that I feel, I know, they're people that I grew up, they're a reflection of me, and I feel like with a lot of other dispensaries is a lot of times, I had someone joke about the other day, is a lot of the dispensary owners, they look like IT guys. They've never touched cannabis a day in their life. And I think that's why, why with cookies and what they were doing and what I was doing beforehand, it was a good synergy because it really is an authentic relationship where, you know, I understand my customers. I'm with them. I don't even view them as customers. A lot of times I view them people as from my community.
I grew up in that community where a lot of my friends, that's how they made a living, is selling marijuana. It's how they provided for their families. So for our first store in Worcester, I've hired 2 of my friends who actually made a living for 10 years selling cannabis in the legacy market. I've hired 2 of my sisters, my father, my nephew, my former basketball coach's son who was locked up for cannabis. I can go on and on about the people when I walk into my doors. I can look, whether it's family, friends, someone from the community that now has a stable job where they actually look forward to going to work. There's not a moment of the day that I'm not grateful for that.
You want disposable, right? Gary Payton, you got one of the classics.
People come from New York just to get the Gary Payton. If we don't have it, then it's a dub.
Can you tell me a little bit though about the pancake syrup? I don't know that one.
Yeah, when you think about pancakes, they're fluffy, right? They have a lot of air in them. They're kind of an airy, light breakfast. So that's what this is. It's good for the morning because it's not going to give you that couch lock. And it's not super heady either. It is a hybrid, right?
And there's that soap you was talking about.
Yes, my favorite, the soap. It does have an indica dominant as well. So definitely be careful with the soap. It's not a morning smoke.
I'm walking out with that today.
For sure.
I live in Brooklyn. I dressed comfortable today. I drove 3 hours just to get here, and it was worth the trip.
Why not New Jersey? It's across the river.
I don't want to, I feel safer coming to a location where there's parking and there's availability and not a lot of people around. So the safety is my big concern.
Despite the fact that marijuana is legal here in Massachusetts, illegal sales remain strong and dangerous.
They are selling it without taxes, without regulations. Reduce that retail price gap. That's really key. That'll drive out the illegal industry.
I think it's going to be a huge step forward with this industry when we can be treated like any other business and accept online payments or accept credit cards. I think it's going to go a long way when these, these hurdles that are really hurting businesses go away. One of the other major hurdles that we experience in the industry, especially myself as a retailer, is a tax code called 280E.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so it's a unique tax code in which if you're involved in any federally legal business, you cannot deduct any of your expenses.
Whoa, what's an example?
So an example would be my employees, a portion of my rent. I'm not allowed to deduct those from any of my income, and as such, I'm taxed on my gross revenue rather than my bottom line. And it's a huge barrier because if I was another business, I would be able to deduct all these daily expenses that I have.
In this industry, there's nothing easy. There's a million hoops and hurdles, and if you don't have a lot of income, if you don't have a lot of capital behind you, that can make any business hard to start up. In the cannabis industry, because of the lack of loans, it can make it almost impossible for a lot of folks. I know it's important for social equity applicants to get an opportunity in this industry because ultimately what we're talking about here is generational wealth. And it's that type of wealth that typically eludes small communities, black and brown communities. And I think to me it's always been bigger than just cannabis because there's going to be so many opportunities down the road outside of cannabis that if we had the funding, if we had the opportunity to have cash in our pockets, we'd be able to expand. If you're going to do this without capital, you got to have a network. If you don't have capital, well, sometimes your network is your capital, right? Your capital is your network. In this space, very much so. You got to get the support of family and friends behind you. I didn't leave my job. I would carve out time during my 9 to 5, and now that I'm a business owner, I actually hate the fact that I did this. But I would work on my business. I would go and I would read the draft regulations that were pending. The more you can educate yourself, that's where all the power is at, because you don't need to hire a lawyer, you don't need to hire a real estate agent. You can go out and you can hit the ground yourself. But But there are certain aspects where, you still need cash, you still need infusion of capital. In those particular instances, like you have to pay for a lease, right? You have to find a property, you have to pay for the lease. Well, you hustle, you work, you find out who those individuals that own those buildings. Ideally, if they're from the community and from the same network that you're in, there's that trust, there's that willing to work with you. And so that's why we chose our first location in Worcester, is because that's where I was born and raised. I was able to call, someone who I knew that was a former city councilor. He was able to put me in contact with a friend of his that was willing to give me a vacant spot for some odd months so he could see what I could do. We didn't have any funding for about the first year when we opened our doors. And it really was just a matter of folks from the community supporting us. We worked with community members and basically bootstrapping everything from our brand on like Craigslist and 99 Designs. And even when it came to the build out, when we got to that portion, we were able to raise some funds from some family and friends. But it was me and my father actually hanging our drywall, doing the painting. So it really was bootstraps 100% of the sense. I was one of the few people in my neighborhood, my community, that was able to actually get a college education. So for a lot of folks, when I told them that I was getting involved in the cannabis industry, a lot of folks felt as though it was a step backwards, maybe, especially when you come from a certain community where it's difficult to get out of a lot of the stigma that surrounds certain communities, whether it's poverty or whether it's drugs. So when I announced, or when I was being known as an individual who's getting involved in the cannabis industry, I think people had the wrong idea of what I was doing. But then as they started to see us grow in the community, started to see us hire people, started to see us donate to community foundations, we do community cleanups, all those things started to destigmatize what people thought. And what I've started to see is people now want to get involved in the cannabis industry.
The reason why I'm at where I'm at today is because I've constantly worked within my network. I have folks, yes, that are from the legacy market, but I also have formed relationships with city councilmen, city councilwomen, lobbyists, all these different business owners that have nothing to do with cannabis. So I think once you can kind of expand your network and know when there's gaps in your operation, or know when there's certain areas of expertise that you don't necessarily have, that you can tap on those individuals. And I do it on a daily basis with Kayla, for instance, prime example. I'm unfortunately, I don't have the opportunity to consume as much as I used to before, or even half the time. And a lot of times when it comes to certain product, when it comes to certain knowledge, I lean on them.
It's always flower for me is my favorite product. Where I'm at now in my career, in my life, I definitely lean towards indica. For me, I approach cannabis now as more of a reward at the end of a day versus than how I used to when I was younger, where it's like, yeah, smoke weed, more of an entertainment and recreational, whereas now for me, it's more of a treat at the end of the day. I've been working for 12, 13, 14 hours. I've been in and out of meetings. So for me, it's more of a therapeutic experience. And I see it on a daily basis. A lot of folks that come into our store, it is their therapy, it is their medicine. Regardless if they acknowledge it, you can see when someone is genuinely medicating to help them with their personal health. If you're going to get your nails done, a manicure, a barbershop, going to get a spa, that is all part of the medical wellness of an individual. And cannabis, hands down, is definitely along those lines. It's an intimate experience with the plant. A lot of times it involves other people and coming together over a common bond, common influence. Sometimes that's music, sometimes that's a film, sometimes that's pain, sometimes that's laughter. And what we tend to find is that a lot of, unless you come from that culture where it's like an upbringing, and a prime example of when I think of like culture, and I see it in different forms and aspects, is, growing up in my older teenage years, some of the best friends I have to this day, being familiar with like hot boxing back in the day, having like a CD or album, or having that experience, that common sitting around and, having laughs, but it's those moments of silence, passing around the joint, sharing those experiences. There's this common love and a bond that is forged by cannabis.